Hi guys, so this is part 2 of the Big Band Logic Pro X template videos, looking at brass today. Previously we've looked at the woodwind, the reeds, and a few of the kind of auxiliary woodwinds in that too. So if you haven't seen that, do go check that out before this one. But yes, today, trumpets, trombones, flugels, solo trumpets, some of the solo instruments that we'll be doing, exposed solos, but also some of the top lead lines in the Trumpet 1 part 2. So the sample libraries I'm using are trumpets, trombones, and flugel are all from sample modeling. That's the Trumpet version 3, the trombone version 3. For the screaming lead lines, I've got the screaming trumpet from Realitone, and then the Birth of the Trumpet from Straight Ahead Samples is doing the kind of really exposed, softer, bluesy, kind of jazz trumpet phrases. So we're going to start off with the sample modeling libraries. This is the Trumpet V3, which is the library by sample modeling. It includes a whole host of other trumpet sounds. If I just head into the libraries tab for it here, you'll actually see we've got a lot of different instruments here, other instruments. We've got cornets, flugels, German trumpet, piccolo trumpet, and then trumpet 2 and 3, which I'll get onto a little bit later on. But yeah, they look a bit like this. For unison ensemble, there are different patches too that vary the vibrato, the tightness in timing, and some other factors to make sure that it sounds like 3 or 4 different trumpets playing together rather than 4 copies of the same trumpet sample library. And it works pretty well. It does work pretty well and gives you that variance you need to get a different sound out of the section. A lot of this stuff with the trumpet library is exactly the same in the trombone library, so I'm going to go into a lot of depth here with the trumpet one, but just remember a lot of this will apply to the trombone library as well as we whiz through that one. So I'm just going to run you down through a few of the controls. So if we look at the views we've got, main view, I'm going to head to real-time sound shaping, and here you've got your dynamics, you've got your vibrato intensity, vibrato rate, attack time, release time. So right off the bat, this is a very customizable, very programmable sample library. This is just one tab. There are plenty more of different things that you can do to change the sound and get exactly the sound you want. And I've had some great results with this. It's working really well in my setup. It is very handy to be able to tweak down to such a detailed level all of those different things. Controllers 1, controllers 2 will give you the modulation. So we've got our tap modulation, your flutter, your growl, and your mutes. And mutes are the things that I'm going to get onto a little bit later as I get into the MIDI controller I've got down here, because that's what I use to control the mutes. We've got pitch and time relating. This is linked to your kind of attack or your pitch fluctuation, your portamento time, and all that sort of stuff. And then controllers 4 is your timbral shaping. So if you've got kind of groups and harmonic groups and things like that, you can use that too. And then lastly, your virtual soundstage, which will actually position the trumpet instrument in a room and give you that kind of 3D sound, which is very, very important when you've got these very dry sample libraries, to give it a bit of room and a bit of the colour that a room would add to a real trumpet in a real room. I don't actually use this tab in here because, as I'll explain in a later video when I come on to the mixing and the routing, I have a different process for adding the room emulation, because I like to make sure that they're all in the same room, and this room isn't applicable to all the other sample libraries like the reeds and the rhythm section. So I have a stage later on where I will add that in to make sure they're all in the same size room and all positioned in that room quite nicely. So here we go. So this is how it sounds. I'm just going to head back to the real-time sound shaping. Get another octave in here. Now, as you'll see, I'm using this fader controller here, and that is so important with this instrument because it is so programmable. You really have to put that human element in as you're playing, and I'll play it live using that controller, adding in the dynamics, adding in the vibrato, adding in the articulations when needed. This is the KORG NanoKontrol 2. I've had this for quite a while actually. As you can see, I've actually got a button missing off the end. Thankfully, I don't need to use that fader, but it's great. It's doesn't take up much room. It does what it needs to do. I just need something that I can MIDI control with the faders. This controller I'm using, the keyboard controller, does do this. It's just on here, they're dials rather than faders, and faders are a bit easier to work with the other hand while I'm playing. So I've got this KORG NanoKontrol 2. Mapped to various different dials that we saw as we headed through the controllers. So the first one here is your dynamic. There, and that's the most important. I mean, the sample library itself starts off on a very, very almost no dynamic, so I need to kind of use that initially just to get the sample library started and get to a dynamic of about CC 70. For that kind of mid-ground level, My next one here is for the vibrato rate. Now my vibrato is actually very low down. If I really overdo the vibrato here, that's just changing the speed of the vibrato, the rate of the vibrato. What it's not doing is the amount. That is actually the mod wheel. So if I take this rate down a little bit, so that's what the mod wheel is doing. So between the two, you can get some really realistic vibrato sounds and vibrato ranges and speeds. So that's that one. This next one here is actually, I have to move to a different controller window for our modulation. So this one is controlling the growl. That's what that's doing. Growl level, if I need that. This one is the flutter tongue. You can really overdo that if you're not careful. Flutter tongue. And this last one here will just cycle. Where are we going? Here we go. We'll just cycle through the mutes. So you've got your open to begin with. If you bring this up a touch, get a cut mute. You can. I could do with a bigger fader for this. It's a little bit fiddly for this bit. You've got a Harmon mute, bucket mute. You've got a Harmon and stem. And then right at the end is for unison ensemble. You might notice that it doesn't actually sound that different, but that is because the unison ensemble one is just about that thing I mentioned earlier where it does the slight fluctuations in pitch and vibrato and all that sort of stuff to just get these trumpets sounding like a section rather than 4 versions of the same sample library. That's great to throw on there for when you need. And that is largely it. We're going to get onto just a couple of other little bits in the library, which give you an even greater level of control over the sound. And those are the key switches. So there are quite a few key switches in this sample library. Now, the first one you may have heard me do already. The velocity is controlling the legato, the type of legato. So the quicker the velocity, the quicker the legato transition is. Almost instantaneous. If I play the first note at whatever volume I want to, and the second one very, very quietly, a very low velocity, you get this kind of portamento slur, kind of gliss thing. Like that. And the slower you press that, or the lower velocity you press that high note, the longer that is. If I go kind of mid-range, There's a little legato transition, and that sliding scale of legato is amazing, really, in adding that human sound to it. You're not getting the same legato transition every time because it's all completely different based on the velocity that you're using. So I found that to work really, really well. The next set of things is actually the key switches, the key switch assignments, and you get a handy little PDF with the sample library for them because there are a lot of them. So if I head down into the kind of range that will give me that control. So the first one is on C1, and it's actually an accent. We'll just put a bit of an accent on that first note. You need a bit more bite to the sound. The next one here will kind of just swell into it, just takes the attack down a little bit. This next one, just little tiny pitch bend. These are all very, very subtle, but a very small, just a little pitch bend into the note. The next one, which is on D sharp one, is these are kind of about the endings of the notes, so the vibrato releases and just some of the other releases on the notes. So this one will just decrescendo off the end. That one just bends slightly off the end. Give it a bit of a vibrato ending. Gives it a bit of a quicker vibrato ending. The next set here will actually give you control over your releases a little more. So if you play a note and then press these keys, I'll play that without the key. It's very, very subtle, very, very subtle, and these will be clearer at louder dynamics. A short release and a vibrato end kind of release. So a lot of those last few do similar to the earlier ones with vibrato, but you press them whilst you're playing the notes. Just lots and lots of options there. Then we kind of get into the falls. So we've got this will be your standard fall, which is on the B1. And similar to the legato, the slower you play that, or the lower velocity that you play that, the slower the fall will be. If I play it quickly or high velocity, it's a quicker fall. And that's your falls, and there is a bit more to the falls, but we will get onto that in a minute. C sharp 2 will actually make your legato detached, and then D2 will give you a kind of semi legato. When we get to our C2, so I'm just skipping back down again here, this actually opens up a second level of key switches. I hope you're keeping up with me here. So if I hold C2, it allows me to use the other notes now as secondary key switches. So these are about the portamento or the glissando of the lower velocity legato options. So when I'm playing like that, this now gives me a scale run rather than a portamento one, like that. And I can change these with a variety of different other key switches to pentatonic, an Arabic scale, mixed scale, or then different kinds of glisses, like that. And then there are other falls and other effects as well that you can have with the secondary key switches. So these are the duets and half valve versions, like that. Just extra techniques, extra effects, and then different kinds of falls. So this is a chromatic fall. This is a mixed mode fall. And then this is a half valve fall, which it's very different to the original fall. So there's a lot there. There's an awful lot there. And I, suggest maybe go back through the video and just have a listen to all those different things, because there's so many different things that this library can do. It's great, it's brilliant, and it basically has you covered for pretty much anything that you're going to be arranging. There are a few kind of special cases of things where you need something slightly different, which I am going to get onto some different libraries, but that will have you covered for the most part. So I'm just going to take a quick look at the trombones now. As I say, they're a very, very similar sample library, so there won't be a whole lot of difference in this one compared to the trumpet. You've got all the same kind of key switches and all that, and you've got all the same playability in the legato and in the vibrato and all that sort of stuff. But this is what it sounds like. And we've got all the same falls and things. Oh, wrong octave. All the same articulations. It is exactly the same. We've just got a couple of slightly different things in the falls, but nothing major. It is basically the same library. Another thing we have in this one, which we do also have in the trumpet one, just in a mute capability, is the wah-wah option. So I've got this just open trombone sound. Just turn it up a little bit. If I then play the key switch for wah-wah, it's pretty good. It works pretty well. And you press that key switch again, you're just back to an open trombone. So you can switch between that wah-wah and the open as and when you want to get that different articulation in a solo or in a section, however you're using it. And I'm just going to take another quick look at the mutes, because I'm sure you want to hear the mutes of this one as well. So we've got the cup mute as well. We've got the bucket mute. We've got the Harmon mute. Harmon with stem. It's one of my favourite sounds out of this trombone library, actually, is that Harmon stem mute. It's great. Lovely. And then the last one is that 4-unison ensemble as well, which gives you the same thing. You can have a trombone section, sounds like, for different trombone players rather than just one trombone player playing 4 parts, which is so important in this kind of writing and this kind of ensemble. You want that personality to shine through in these instruments. So that's the trombone one, and not a lot of difference there. My faders on the NanoKontrol all control the same CC, the same articulations, the same changes to the sound. It's just a different instrument. So that's the Trombone V3 2. Now, if we just take a quick look at the Flugelhorn library as well for some solo instruments. So the Flugelhorn is the same thing. It's still sample modeling, and it's part of the Trumpet V3 library. It's in that kind of other instruments folder that had the piccolo trumpet and the German trumpet and all that sort of stuff. And just as before, it's exactly the same. I use the dynamic fader here. You've got your sound. It's all the same key switches, but it's just a Flugelhorn. So this is how it sounds. And I think this is beautiful on the really, really quiet dynamics. My velocity is not sensitive enough. It's catching all those portamentos, but it works really well. Sounds really great. So that is the Flugelhorn, and it's, as I say, it's the same as the other 2 libraries. Now, it's worth noting that the demos I'm playing here are not using the room emulation and the space that I add in at the final stage. So there will be a lot more kind of realism in that too. And as I did with the first video, there'll be a little demo at the end showing this section playing something. And I will use the room emulation there so you can hear the difference and hear how it kind of fits into that sort of sound. But just be wary when I'm playing these demos, they are the sample libraries in their kind of rawest state for you to then do stuff with and add things onto later. Just having a look at some of the libraries from some of the other developers now, and this is the Birth of the Trumpet from Straight Ahead Samples, and I use this for one very specific purpose. It will do a lot, but I use this for the kind of Miles Davis-y kind of soft trumpet solo stuff, and the reason that is because it has this feature called Smart Delay in it, which I'm going to get into. And the rest of it works very much like the Trombone V3. You've got your mutes, you've got your articulations, you've got your dynamics and your velocity things and room emulation, or might just be reverb on this one. So on the face of it, it's very simple. Compared to the Trumpet V3, you might say it doesn't sound quite as realistic as that one. But this library has a little hidden trick up its sleeve. So where it says real time, the top left here, if I go over to Smart Delay, now this is what I mainly use this library for. And a lot of other people use all the articulation and all that sort of stuff to get really great sounding lines out of this. But the Smart Delay feature will, in essence, do away with the kind of time spent programming the sample modeling library into a kind of realistic sounding thing and almost do it in real time. So what you do is you play your line a bar earlier than you'd like it to sound. And this sample library is full of phrases, loops, samples, all sorts of stuff that it's pulling different transitions from, different phrasing, performances, different accented notes, loads and loads of different stuff, and gives you a much more realistic human sounding performance for that line. So here's a little taster. So I'll play something, you won't hear anything initially, and then what would be 4 beats later, you will hear that line played in a much more human way. There we go. So it's that's all there is to it, and that to me sounds much more realistic than the real-time mode, of course, and even then with the kind of stock non-altered Trumpet V3 library. So it's perfect for those kind of softer brushes, ballady trumpet things that need a trumpet solo, you know, these long kind of held notes. Just those kind of transitions, it works really, really well for. I've been playing around with it. I haven't used it on an arrangement just yet, but I know that it was going to be perfect for that sort of thing. And if we just say we put the Harmon stem mute on as well, it applies everything from the sample library to that Smart Delay. So yeah, just a tiny little look at that library. If you'd like me to go into more depth of this one, do let me know, because it is fairly new. I can certainly dig into all the articulations and have a look at all those as well. There are a few that are ever so slightly different to the Trumpet V3. But yeah, just a quick look at what that can be used for and what I will be using that for. And finally, this is the Realitone Screaming Trumpet. It's the Realitone Core Edition. It's their version of a Warp IV trumpet sample library with Wayne Bergeron, of course, from Gordon Goodwin's Big Fat Band and a whole host of other massive bands, big bands. He's well known for that top screaming trumpet lead tone. And this is what that library does really well. The Trumpet V3 library works well enough, but it doesn't go up to the range that this does. It doesn't quite have the bite or the aggression that this does when you put this in as a Trumpet 1 line in a section. It can also help, because it is a different trumpet, to make the section sound a little more realistic because you've got some different instruments going on there as well. So yeah, I use it for a whole host of things, mainly in shout choruses or in later sections where you need a bit more bite from the trumpet section. It sounds a little bit like this. Now that high C is not the highest note. It does go all the way up there, but you know that well-known iconic sound of the screaming lead trumpet lines there in this library. And the really interesting thing with this is the articulations as well. So you've got your standard. Let me just find my right octave. There you go. You've got your standard kind of articulation staccato. Your growls, flutter valve, flutter tongue, and then just your standard sustain as well, like that. And then going up to the next set of articulations are kind of attack articulations. So you've got a scoop up into the note. You've got a rip up into the note. You've got a flutter up. So much fun, this library. Grace notes. A long rise. Kind of a mordant, a half mordant. Scale up, and then a bend too. But what I really find useful in this library is the release articulations. So if you've got a trumpet section and you need it all to have a bit more punch going out of a section, you need it to kind of fall off or just have a slight variation in a bend. You do have those in the Trumpet V3, but not quite to this kind of dramatic level or aggressive level, some might say. So this is the fall. Oh, hang on. Little preview of the rise long there. That's the rise long. Here's the short fall. Here's the short fall again. It's two short falls. Short fall and a short valve fall. And then you've got the fall oomph, the Maynard Ferguson rip, a long rip, which is really useful, Doit, a long fall with the valve, which is great at the end of tunes to give it that kind of fall, you know. A shake, a wide shake. Kiss, and then a flare too. So there's those fall articulations that really help to tie a section together, from my experience anyway, of using it in arrangements. So it's just a little look there at the brass, the trumpets, trombones, and solo instruments that I use in my arrangements, and I hope that's given you a little bit more insight into those libraries. If you'd like me to go into in depth in any of the other libraries I've mentioned, do let me know. I could do separate videos to look a bit more in detail, but just a general overview of the section there. More videos on the way. We're going to look at the rhythm section, we're going to look at the mixing, and I'm also going to look at the export and how I then kind of create a score from that in Sibelius for rehearsals for performances. So stick around for those. Thanks for watching.